No. Don't you think that's strange? The wolves? They don't do that. They don't track people. Yeah. Maybe they don't think you're human. So how many of us are there?
You ask too many questions.
Oh, maybe you don't know either. So what are you doing up here anyway?
How do you know that I'm not evaluating you?
Oh, I don't know. Are you? Maybe I don't care.
Do you expect me to talk?
Good afternoon, good evening, good night, and welcome to episode 226 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm Becca, and as always joined by my fellow co-hosts Chris and Dave. How are you both?
Good evening, folks.
Oh, good to come across you guys.
Yeah.
Just come across.
Why did I just picture Ricky Gervais doing that staff induction day at the
Oh
office
no,
then?
that's cringe inducing.
And that was really weird last night. I saw Ricky Gervais. I went to see that George Michael film last night.
Yes, how was it? Let's talk about
really,
it for 2 hours.
really, really good. But I just want to say Ricky Gervais was one of the talking heads in it. And
Oh, really?
It's really, really good. Yeah. But anyway, it's worth seeing. If you get a chance, I wouldn't necessarily go to cinema to see it, but when you get an opportunity to see George Michael Freedom Uncut, because it covers so much of our lifetime, and it covers his battle with Sony, the record label, and all the things that happened to him mentally and his health and everything, it's really good. And it's narrated by him. It's sat on a shelf for about 4 years before they finally decided to put it out, because it was the last thing he was working on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so yeah, that's worth taking. Anyway, forgetting that. How are we?
It's very hot here in the UK, so we're cooling down. And
Yeah,
we're on
it's a bit
strike,
warm.
so
And we're all on strikes, can't go anywhere.
the train's on strike, BA's on strike.
Mm.
It's all up in arms.
Yeah. Not a nice place at the moment, but yeah, it's by British standards, it's hot and stuffy at the moment, and it is mainly the fact that
It's like the 70s again.
I was just thinking that, I wasn't alive during that time, but I was thinking, hold on a minute.
my mother was pregnant with me during a drought, and it's really hot at the moment, and everything's on strike, and we've got inflation about to go into double digits, and
So
you're
it
like,
is the 1970s.
it is the 1970s, yeah,
Just
absolutely,
see the 3-day week and the blackouts, and we'd be there.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah,
Right.
so what are we covering tonight?
Let's review an unexpected film to cheer us all up.
What are we covering tonight, Becca?
Yes, so tonight we are reviewing Bourne Legacy, starring Jeremy Renner, Rachel Weisz, aka Mrs. Daniel Craig, Ed Norton, Scott Glenn, Stacey Keach, Corey Stoll, plus bits from Paddy Considine and Albert Finney, with a score by James Newton Howard. I got the old information. And still, maybe extreme ways, it's played over the end credits as it has done for the previous films. Written by Tony Gilroy and Dan Gilroy, and directed by Tony Gilroy, and released in 2012. So I had some wrong information there written down, so I had to quickly correct it on the
And also starring Matt Damon as Sir not appearing in this film.
Yeah, he is not appearing in this film.
You can use my photo from the Bourne from Good Will Hunting if you like.
Yeah, it does look at all. Or is it from Ripley, perhaps?
Yeah, I didn't actually notice the change of composer for this.
No.
James Newton Howard worked with Hans Zimmer on the sort of Dark Knight trilogy. Amongst lots of other things, I don't want to do him down. He stepped in at the last minute for Howard. Guy who did The Lord of the Rings was going to do King Kong, and they had a bit of a sort of creative difference, and he stepped in to do that. He has done.
There's a lot of changes, but I did notice cinematography by Robert Elswit, who also directed Mission. No, he didn't. He lensed Ghost Protocol and Rogue Nation of Mission Impossible, and also Tomorrow Never Dies, which enjoyed a re-release in cinemas recently here in the UK.
I'd say Rogue Nation is probably the best looking of the Mission Impossible films.
Gorgeous.
And that Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez film,
Geely.
Geely, which I've never seen.
I've never seen it, but it arrived.
me neither, I
It
made sure you
arrived pre-piss taken, and most people didn't bother.
Wasn't there like a no? There was no press screening or something for it, and that's always a bad sign.
Yeah, he also lensed. I'm looking at things I've seen here. I remember talking to Chris about watching all sorts of films in my teens, when they were on Channel 4 before film channels were going. And I said, yeah, because you're about 13, you're watching to see if you can see a bit of filth or something. And he did. And he did lens Desert Heart, so I'll let you look that up yourself.
It was early on in his career.
He did Boogie Nights. He did Magnolia. So he's Thomas Anderson's, Paul Thomas Anderson's go-to.
That's why they look so great.
So There Will Be Blood is an extraordinarily beautiful looking film.
Well, so if anything, I mean, we tried to record this earlier in the week, but due to technical issues, we weren't able to. It's like Dave and I were basically, obviously, this is probably going to be quite a short podcast, certainly by our standards, because this is kind of like a Bond film, but without Bond, basically. But great performances, and it looks beautiful.
Are you worried? Are you worried it's going to be too short? Well, Liam Gallagher was in that George Michael film as well.
Yeah, so I can't go on my Thunderbirds rant this week. So and George Michael has already passed on, sadly, so we can't bump him off. So that's quite good. So we can talk.
Well,
about
no,
that.
I'm a bit worried because Tony Bennett was in it as well.
Oh no!
And he's 95 with dementia, so careful.
Oh god, but he's still a legend, though.
Yeah.
I mean, if any listeners are worried about this podcast being a bit of a tangent from the film we talk about, well, I think the film itself is a bit of a tangent for the Bourne series. It's like it tries to like make up something out of like nothing new in particular, really. It just sort of
We will get into that. This is screenplay by Tony Gilroy. Came on as director. Tony Gilroy, we would also know. I believe he did Rogue One, didn't he?
Yeah, I believe so.
Didn't he do Rogue One?
I think. Well,
or did he fix Rogue One?
I think that's the room.
Sorry, he fixed it. It was Gareth Edwards, but he came in and fixed it.
Did he write it though?
Yes.
He might have wrote Rogue One.
He directed Michael Clayton, which is a decent George Clooney film. It's not my favourite George Clooney, sort of his more Up in the Air is probably my favourite of his lot, but Duplicity, and he's going to be the showrunner for the Cassian Andor show as well. The thing I didn't know, or I'd forgotten I knew, is his brother co-wrote it with him, Dan Gilroy, and that's Mr. Rene Russo. I don't think I remembered
Fun
that.
fact.
But I think my first sort of comment, without getting into first thoughts, I will go into first thoughts, but I'll quickly say where I saw it. I saw it I think I saw it on something like a Saturday or Sunday morning, and it was one of those sort of C film or show film first. They've been rebranded over the years, and I managed to get hold of. Now, in my head, I had 3 free tickets, and I didn't know if you could do that with show film first, so there may be a slight imperfection in the memory here. But I remember it was the same year as The Dark Knight Rises, and I went with Malcolm, who you guys both met at the wedding, and we had opposite feelings. We came out opposite from the two films, in that The Dark Knight Rises, Malcolm came out quite happy, and I was just going, what the fuck was that? Now, I've had a bit more of a nuanced take of it over the years as we reviewed it, and it was a long show, but my first thought before I'd really sat down...
His belief!
It was just, it's training! It's belief! Yeah, but I was a bit, what was that? And that really wasn't the Batman film I wanted, and he enjoyed it. And again, several rewatches, I couldn't tell you what he thinks of it now. But the Bourne Legacy had been absolutely the other way round. He came out like, I came out sort of not quite sure, but it was all right. But I was not the opposite way round. I was more like him this time, in that we were both a bit, what did we just watch? Jeremy Renner had been in Ghost Protocol the year before, and had shown a real sort of handiness for hand-to-hand fighting, which at this point, I think the Avengers was out by this point. But again, a lot of that is from distance and, the bow and arrow and stuff. It wasn't until he made Ghost Protocol that you're like, he's pretty good at the hand-to-hand stuff as well. And so I thought he was all right in it. I thought Rachel Weisz was wasted, but I like her. Little known film that she was in with Paul Rudd called The Shape of Things. I really, really enjoyed her in. She's been very good in a lot of smaller things. And the action had been good, and the sort of visual tie to the previous trilogy had been strong. But this film just stopped. You almost feel, if you didn't hear that Moby track, you'd honestly believe and it had all gone digital by then, but it was almost like they were missing a reel. and we'll get into all that in a minute. I thought the film was incomplete, and I didn't love it, but it was okay, and I thought it was promising enough that if you were going to carry on and try and make a series with the Aaron Cross character, this might be all right. Funny that Darren Cross is in this film as well as Aaron Cross, because you got the bad guy from Ant-Man.
Really?
Some general points I'd just make about it at the outset, both from original viewing and this time, but really hit me this time, is the cast is too big and most of them are unused. I've just mentioned the Darren Cross character from Ant-Man. Well, that's what's the name of the actor? I've totally blanked on his name. He's on here somewhere. I'm just looking at the list of names. Corey Stoll.
His name I can't pronounce.
I still think of him first off for his role in the earliest seasons of the American House of Cards, because he was really good in that. He's quite a versatile actor. It's not so much that it's just that it's less that he's got range and more that he works in everything. You know, because he played a real
seen him in a bad film.
He played a really desolate character.
If he's in a bad film, he's probably going to be the best thing in it.
But his character in Ant-Man, his character in House of Cards, his character here, they're all him and they're all really similar. But, he played this right waster in House of Cards. He was trying to put his life right, but he had problems with drinking, women and drugs and everything else. And he just couldn't get ahead of his own failings. And it really worked very well. But he's hardly doing anything in this film. He's sort of in the background with things to say. And he was an established character actor by this point. Elizabeth Marvel, who was also in House of Cards, she played a character called Dunbar, and I can't remember where she ended up. She might have been Secretary of State or something, and she's in one scene. And you got Albert Finney brought back, but again, it's almost in the background. Just to go, he's still here. Look, Joan Allen's been brought.
Literally a cameo role.
I don't really mind Joan Allen and David Stratham being brought back for the sort of connective tissue, but they've wasted her. They waste Donna Murphy. Stacey Keach. Why is he in this film?
I know. It's, a fantastic character actor. It's like he's in it again for a cameo role. I think that's, to be fair, that's like most of the cast in this film. Like Ed Norton. He's in it for five minutes. If you add up all the time he's on the screen, it probably comes to more than...
He appears to be in it a lot, but actually his scenes are very short.
Yeah, if you add it all up, it's probably like 20 minutes, half an hour, something like that.
I'll give Oscar Isaac a pass, because this is inside Llewyn Davis, pre-Star Wars,
Yeah, it's one of those kind of before he was famous type
pre-A Most Violent Year, pre-Ex Machina, etc.
He was still... I remember he was one of those actors who were like, at the time I was like, he's good, because he was in that British Scott Robin Hood film. And
Prince John. He did disappear into his role there, because I always forget he was in it.
I remember, everyone thinks of that film, but I remember like seeing his performance and thought, this guy's a talent.
Yeah, because the film's poor.
He plays it. I mean, he plays a really good, an interesting, different take.
Yeah, he's nuanced in a film that isn't that good, and he does disappear into the role because you could be forgiven, you'll never forget his character in it, but you could almost forget it's him. Not a million miles away from what Joaquin Phoenix did in Gladiator, but a bit better than that, I'd say. But the film itself, I mean, just on that film, it's difficult for your. It's in one respect easy for your performance to stand out in a bad film, and in one respect difficult because everything around you is not that good. And Russell Crowe, I think, did every fucking United Kingdom accent in that film at one point. He was Yorkshire at one point. He was Irish. He insulted that guy on the radio for suggesting Irish, but I could fucking hear it. I could hear Irish in his accent at times.
He travelled up and down the country.
He was all over the shop. So no one came out of that film with a lot of credit. And in fact, it was one of the last films I watched with my dad before he was terminal. And I went to see Toy Story 3 with him. And the last scene, the thing about saying goodbye to things when my terminal father sat next to me, that was a tough watch. But so Robin Hood really gave some levity. Because there was a bit where he jumps. There's a bit where Russell Crowe emerges out of the water near the end and roars, and we both fell about laughing. Honestly, I've never been closer to falling off a seat in a film.
You actually fell off your chair.
It was the most me and Michael him had laughed since we went to see Michael Bublé and got really everyone pissed off around us because we were laughing at how cheesy he fucking was.
Oh.
But anyway. But on the other hand, it's difficult to stand out because the film's crap and you're laughing at the film, or you forget the film if you're bored. And Robin Hood was a strange mixer of both. Laugh out loud bad and really boring.
It's one of those odd things with that Robin Hood film, because it was originally going to be started off as an actual interesting concept where like
Nottingham.
Sheriff Nottingham was actually the good guy.
Yeah.
And it's like Robin Hood's the bad guy.
It was an alternate take on the classic tale, really, isn't it?
And then like the sort of the
Ridley Scott came on board and tossed everything interesting
well,
about it.
I'm not sure if it was Ridley Scott, 'cause it was his.
That's what I've read.
It was his project to begin with, but I think I heard it was the studio that kept like meddling, thinking,
but it's proof that even Ridley Scott can't transcend a bad script. But yeah,
he can shoot the shit out of it though.
Yeah, his films are all beautiful, and Robin Hood's no exception. But and the only other character in this, the guy who's the CEO of the pharmaceutical company, Dennis Boutsikaris, he is one of the lawyers in Better Call Saul. So lots of good people wasted in this. Zelka Ivanek, who we know as a bad guy in one of the early series of 24, 1.5 scenes really. So I thought the cast was too large. I thought they didn't have enough to do, and there just wasn't enough story here. I think the two headline observations that I'll probably develop during the film is the pacing is miles off, and I think that contributes to making the film feel incomplete. I took 2 viewings to get through it this time, because I watched it, to be fair, I was having a drink as well. Not getting drunk by anything means, but we were chatting and I was just losing concentration. But 50 minutes in, he was still in the sort of mountains, woodland sort of area. 50 minutes into the film, it hasn't really started. So that's a problem. And then we go through quite a perfunctory trace plot. And then they get away, they're on a boat, and you think, right, here we go to whatever Act 3 is going to be. And she's like, I wish we could disappear. Credits. And I'm like, really? Nothing's happened. You've run across some rooftops in a hot location to sort of remind us that you can do what the Bourne Ultimatum did. And it's just very, very oddly paced. The other thing I think I would say is it doesn't do itself any favours trying to almost devalue the Jason Bourne character. They refer to Bourne as a first generation agent, pre all these chemicals, which is a stupid plot anyway. If you're willing to get over the disbelief of that plot point of you can viral out and that, which will develop as we go through, then probably you could get on board with it. But I just found it inherently fucking ludicrous and quite a grounded series. And you're kind of trying to say this is the next generation and they're way better than that dinosaur program Bourne was on. And I just think the film didn't earn that. It tried desperately to tie into the previous film, but it doesn't really. It's trying to introduce... You're either tying into some sort of continuation of the previous films, or you're effectively doing a soft reboot where you introduce us to this new character, try and interest us in him and develop him on from that. And they kind of did neither. They kind of tried to dial into the Bourne Ultimatum, but they kind of dropped that a little way through. They tried to produce a new interesting character, because I think he's full on like learning difficulties without his chems. But neither are that interesting, and so I just came out. I watched it this time. Second time, when I went through it again, I concentrated a bit better. I got through it, but I can see why this never got a sequel.
Yeah, Becca, what's your thoughts? Or
Oh gosh, yeah. So these last 2 Bourne movies I just skipped when they came out. I think I was more excited about Skyfall than this film.
What do you mean? You think you were more excited about
I think
Skyfall? Well, I'm not sure now. I can't remember.
More excited about.
Well, this has only got budget Daniel Craig in it.
No, I feel like I'm being overly harsh already, and I haven't really said much. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to see the last 2 Bourne films in this series. So I've waited all these years until now to watch it for this podcast. We tried to record this again earlier in the week, but I only got halfway through. They were on TV a while ago, and I thought, I've got this recorded, so I had this in my arsenal. But I only kind of got halfway, so I kind of wasn't really prepared anyway. But to be honest, on this first watch, I'm just going to be honest here. It looks beautiful, great performances, but in terms of kind of like Bourne and plot and everything, I'm sure fans will go up in arms and go, no. But I was just bored, rigid. It's really interesting cinematography. It's kind of good to explore how how this project kind of really came to be and the evolution of them. I think that the interesting idea of trying to change your DNA and genetics and one thing another, and so it's always an interesting topic. But I just don't. You do have to suspend your disbelief quite a lot. I mean, I'm sure there's probably something that the US government and the global governments are working on now with agents in the field. That's probably a real thing that's happening right now. So there's a cynicism and sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm clutching at straws, literally. Like paranoid kind of thriller. It's got kind of got those kind of Cold War conspiracy theory kind of vibes running through it. But I was just like, I just found it really boring and dull. Like I can only apologise. And then like you, David, I kind of thought, it ended in quite a weird place. And just for me, it's one of those films that kind of ended a couple of times, a few different endings. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm very keen to see how, again, next week's film, Jason Bourne, I haven't seen, so I'm saving it all up especially. So I'm very keen to see how that feeds in, considering it kind of picks up with the old cast. But for me it was like watching a Bond but without a Bond, so it was a bit like Bourne Light. Although Jeremy Renner is always very good value. He's brilliant in whatever he does, whether he's Marvel superhero or crazy secret agent. Or
I go along with that. Jeremy Renner is not the problem in this film, except Rachel Weisz being there making me think he is a budget Daniel Craig.
No, she's Mrs. Daniel Craig. But no, she's fantastic. I think I really rate her quite highly as an actress. She does, above and beyond. She's brilliant. Whatever she's in. But again, and the bit part of this cast as well. You don't get Stacey Keach, great American character actor and theatre actor as well, and have him on screen for 5 minutes. You just don't. They're wasted so much wasted talent in this film. But yeah, that's my rant. Sorry.
I mean, the thing with Rachel Weisz, though, it did get me thinking, which I occasionally do when I watch these Hollywood movies, is okay, so you got Rachel Weisz, who's a British actress doing American character. Why does she need to be American? You could she could easily be like.
I nearly said that out loud during the viewing, but when I watched it properly, I had my wife next to me watching it, and I thought. I pointed out she was Mrs. Daniel Craig because she really likes Daniel Craig's Bond, my wife, and I pointed out. So I was pointed out that that's his wife, and then when she spoke, I mean she'd already spoken in the film, but the first time she spoke after I said it, I was about to point out she's British though, but then I thought that's just going to start a conversation because I don't think she knows who she is. So it would probably start that conversation then, which, why is she playing American? And I thought, leave it, I'll tell her another time. Yeah, I mean, just before Chris goes into his thing, when I finished mine, just as you were talking, I was thinking, and I was listening to what you were saying, but I was also thinking, this is reminding me of something less grounded from the same era. Because the Bourne films are at least attempting to be grounded. Yeah, whether those agents exist in those ways with those skill sets, not the Chem ones, I mean the Bourne Jason version, I don't know, but they try and play it like a real sort of espionage, albeit slightly heightened with greater action and everything else. And I'm thinking there's something about the Chems that lead me to much sillier high concept films. What am I thinking of? And I know what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of two films. I'm thinking of Lucy, the Scarlett Johansson film.
Oh gosh, yes.
And which I'd almost forgotten. I had to look the name of it up. I had to look up a Wikipedia page to remember the name of the film. I knew it was just her first name, in the character's first name, but I couldn't remember what it was. And the other film is Limitless, which was a Bradley Cooper film. And it's basically the same principle grafted onto an espionage thriller, and that does not work.
Yeah, same kind of, it's like mind-altering drugs, isn't it? And
yeah.
I think with the Limitless is the kind of thing that he doesn't need anymore. Like he obviously takes the tablets and everything, but
what? So he virals out then?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah,
yeah.
But, he kind of unlocks part of his brain so that he doesn't need doesn't need the drugs anymore.
The thing is, though, we see that in action in a film like Limitless. We actually see we see the advantage.
How it alters the brain chemistry.
Like one of the things, and I will get into my thoughts in a minute, but the thing with like the chems and the things like that, we're told this, but we don't actually. But what makes him different than Bourne in the first place? And then later on, they introduce this other agent who they say, oh, he's off a separate program, who's like you know, he's better than both than Treadstone and
Outcome,
and Outcome, and but we don't know how. Like, in what way? I mean, what, they're just all good at their job? I mean, but Bourne was good at his job.
The reason that they sell it, yeah, and if the chems weren't mentioned, obviously whoever would win in a fight would. It's right when they say who would win out of these superheroes, and it's which superheroes film is it? They'll win. You know, it's like you get it on the Assassin's Creed games. Which assassin's the best? Well, they're all the fucking same. They're just it's like
just in different time eras.
Yeah, it's you know, there isn't a better. They've all got the same skill set more or less. But the fact is, on the presentation of the character, actually, Damon, if anything's a bit stockier and a bit younger, so he might. Is he younger? I'm not sure, thinking about it now. But the point is, you wouldn't put much between them. So to sell you the whole point about how important these chems are to him and the whole viral and out thing, you get footage of him. Can I stay in your program, please? And he's clearly quite slow. I mean, you still have to reach a certain standard to get into the military, I would have thought. You certainly do in this country. You don't have to be a genius by any means, but they don't take... But they paint him a bit special needs, and I say that with no hint of humour or piss-taking, right? And I think, well, if it's just to bring somebody far below the base level of David Webb as he was when he joined his programme and became Jason Bourne, then... is this just to widen the pool of candidates so you can go and get special needs people? Bourne is effectively recruited like Daniel Craig's James Bond. Slightly maladjusted, but physically and mentally well above average. And here it's just a way that they can recruit somebody who's obviously got some sort of physical abilities because he's in the forces, but like all his mental cognition comes from these drugs. Which means the character's not really him anyway. You know, it's like the Red Dwarf episode where like Rimmer does a mind patch.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, isn't it?
Which means that we're not connected to the character. I think your heart is meant to be moved when you see the footage of him damaged and like in his uniform and asking if he can stay in the program if he passes. But it doesn't really work for me.
You could sort of make it if it was like, he was like someone who was like wounded in combat or damaged in some way in combat, and this is like your second chance almost. So that's why he went into the taking like the chems, because it's almost like an experimental vehicle drug.
The chems is experimental. I mean, just off the top of my head, he was exposed to... This is totally off my head, top of my head. He was exposed to some kind of chemical weapon in Iraq, Afghanistan, wherever it was the character ended up being. And this experimental drug brought him back and actually enhanced him very slightly above the average. You know, the pills were better than they thought. But he has to keep taking them, otherwise either his life or his mobility and health is at risk. I still don't think that's a great idea, and in my defence, it's off the top of my head, but it's better than what we got.
I mean, yeah, because to get back to the point, all we really see is I need my pills, I need my pills, I need my pills.
Yeah.
And in a way that kind of really undermines your key relationship with the Rachel Weisz.
And halfway through, she goes, "You don't need those pills. You viraled out on that side." So it's 50 minutes plus in the woods.
Your physical pills, as in like the ones that make you good at fighting, you don't need. It's the stuff in your mental ones, sort of like, well, what?
Well, okay. Isn't the brain a physical organ? None of that makes sense. But even if you went with it, 50 minutes of the film plus, I stopped looking at 50 minutes. It might have been another 10 minutes afterwards. I can't remember. But it was at least 50 minutes in that sort of mountains area with the beard and everything else. And then there was the whole Rachel Weisz and the house attack and everything else, which is quite well done in a View to a Kill kind of way. And then but you viraled out. So we're well over halfway through the film when we're introduced to the concept of he can viral out if they go to the Philippines. They go to the Philippines, one chase, onto a boat, done.
The whole premise is so he can get his fix.
It's literally just so he can chase that dragon.
He's only gone to Rachel Weisz because that's the only person. And we're told this halfway through the film that like he knows her from giving her the pills before. So there's no prior relationship established before that. It's done in after the fact.
Yeah.
And he's just gone like, I need the pills because and that's the basis of the whole relationship.
Yeah.
And it's a bit, and it just doesn't work. It's very, very thin.
They have no chemistry. What he should have done, because Daniel Craig got her into bed, so he should have told her he couldn't find the stationery.
Yeah. Come up, me look.
And she said, Daniel's got away with that one. Because I've always thought Jeremy Renner is Daniel Craig ordered from Wish. You know what I mean? It's Daniel Craig with his face a bit messed up. Yeah. So, I don't know. Have you got anything more to add in first thoughts, Chris, really?
No, yeah, so I'll give my first. So I remember seeing this I actually saw this as a preview. One of those sort of things where you sort of see it like a week or a few days before it actually
Did you pay to
released.
see it?
No.
Same as me then. I saw the same preview, but down in my part of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't remember in what it was relation to. I can't remember, but it was like, yeah. It was one of those things where you go and watch a film before it's released to the general audiences, and I was like, oh, cool. And I remember, while I still acknowledge the same problems, which is that it leans way too much on the previous Bourne film to try and connect itself where it really didn't need to. But I generally walked away thinking, yeah, but it's okay. The action was pretty decent. It had a good cast for Edward Norton is a good choice as that evil CIA guy in the control room. It's the right fit, all that kind of thing. And I thought, well, the action's pretty good. Yeah. Okay, I'm fairly happy with it. I'm not as down as most people are saying now. Though I haven't seen it in a while, so when I rewatched it, not today, previous couple of days ago, I was kind of like in a really kind of, I kind of thought, this is kind of abomination, really. And I don't mean it to be mean because I still kind of think, the cast is good, and I almost think like the cast, the crew, are all kind of giving its best, but it's a hopeless cause because the film is completely compromised from its concept. I don't know whether they just didn't have enough to go with, so they just had to sort of fill in the blanks from Bourne Ultimatum.
It's never a good idea to keep raising the stakes either, is it? There's this whole shadowy thing behind Blackbriar and Treadstone, and they've got super agents with willies that shoot razors.
Well, yeah, you're going to go up and up, and then you end up with dying at the day, and you've got to dial it back down again, or you end up with Raker, and you've got to do for your eyes only, for example.
It's not campy, but it has raised the stakes without
No, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
It doesn't earn
dial it down.
It's. I thought it was actually really fucking clunky.
Yeah.
Like the whole type. Like there's one bit where like you see you see a scene from the Bourne Ultimatum where one character's like going on a phone and saying, yes, Bourne's here, but Bourne's in New York. And Edward Norton picks up the phone as if he's talking to him, and it just reminded me of that. When you see like comic relief, and he interjects like other characters like reacting to like characters from a TV program or a movie or something.
Yeah, it
kind of felt just like that because that's exactly what it was. It was like Edward Norton picking up a phone, says one line, and he's as if he's reacting to like this other guy who was from the previous film on the phone to someone else, and I was like, oh, okay. Were we really holding our breath? Like, I wonder who he's on the phone to. Do you know?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm kind of interested to sort of see if they just sort of like retrofitted that or what. But it just felt really unnecessary. That adding like the Pamela Landry stuff, even that, it kind of felt like they just completely backtracked the Pamela Landry character, as if to say, oh, the win she had in the last film is for nothing now, because now she's getting in trouble.
I mean, it was an uncertain win, but again, a bit like the end of the Bourne Ultimatum. Like when I said during the Bourne Ultimatum that I liked them leaving it there because there was an element of hope. They may not chase him. They may never find out he's still alive. Then you get to Jason Bourne, which I'm still to rewatch, but he never really got that piece. He got a life of sorts, but it's one eye over the shoulder all the time. And I felt that about Landy. There was always a chance that he'd have a sniper take her out before he's apprehended. She might always be looking over her shoulder as well, but we were left with the hope that she just about got away with doing the right thing by the end of that film, just in time. Thank goodness. Let's hope she finds some peace now for what she's been involved with, and they've just wiped it away in a scene.
It's like, how many people have they got working for it? And they're like, oh, we've got like so many of these programs. And it just feels it just feels like you're stretching this concept a bit too much. Like, it would have made a bit more sense had you just sort of crossed the line with the Bourne thing, and like, this is like new set of people doing a new set of program. After everything's all failed, this has nothing to do with David Stratham character or Scott Glenn. This is like a new team of coming up with a new concept, and it all goes same type of thing happens. Aaron Cross goes AWOL or something like that. It's basically you're doing the similar sort of thing, but it's like, oh well, but new set of characters.
Once you use the Bourne characters and images of Bourne and discussion of Bourne to describe him as a Mark I character, and then introduce our new super duper duper agents, I think you're kind of disrespecting the source material. And by the source material, I don't mean the book, I mean the original trilogy of films. It felt a bit desperate watching it this time. It's like you're really struggling here. You've got a decent and fairly interesting actor in Jeremy Renner. I mean, he's made it to the top without having Manson idol looks by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm not calling him ugly or insulting him, but budget Daniel Craig's as far as I'll go, because they have some similarity in features, that's all. He's not overly big, he's not overly handsome, and but he can play leading man, and he's quite interesting. I haven't loved any of Phase 4, but like, I enjoyed him in Hawkeye, particularly. And so you've got a decent actor, you've got a very good actress there. Edward Norton, for the baggage he comes with, is a very, very decent character actor, but you don't have the concept to back it up. And so you're desperately stretching. Well, what if there was something behind them? This sounds like a single brainstorming session, and almost anything that's been suggested has gone in. Well, what makes him different from Bourne? They're enhanced, and that's just gone in without any thought at all. And it does belong in like a sort of sci-fi action, and not an espionage thriller.
I don't know. I'm just thinking of like of things that ideas would have been better. Like, why isn't he just Treadstone and this is the clear-up operation, and he's just running for his life now?
You've only got two options that don't stretch. You've only got a handful of options that don't stress credibility, and without having thought of them before this moment, I can't promise they won't be shit. This is just, again, just off the top of my head. Off the top of my head, you can almost treat it like Star Wars treats post-Order 66. So there are still Treadstone operatives out there that they are trying to track down, because they'll never be safe until they're all accounted for, and we follow another one. You do a kind of proper version of them. Like you say, they followed on with a program. Treadstone was a mistake, but this is it done right. And you effectively get an American James Bond series, but with a Treadstone type agent.
Yeah.
That's the only way to do it I can think of. That's the only two ways to do it I can think of. This is the third way, but it fundamentally insults the original way of doing it. Now, had they written the film really well, paced it really well, had some proper chemistry and reasoning for those two to be together, because even at the end when she says I'd like to get lost, it cuts to a wider shot of them just chatting at the table, and you can't honestly say with your hand on your heart that's going to be a romantic relationship. It's almost like they could just be like friends and colleagues or whatever. If you fixed all that and you still had that elephant in the room of the chems and the slightly sort of desperate spin-off feel, but you go, but the film was interesting and the character was interesting, I could go with this for a few more. It would never be the Matt Damon trilogy, but I could go with this. So it was tenuous to start with, but the execution just made it insupportable to me. What I will say just quickly though is the film did okay. It did in the 270s. The first film did 214, second film did 290, something like that. So it's a solid hit. It's not as strong as the at this point two Greengrass films, and it won't be as strong as Jason Bourne. So it grosses fourth out of the fifth, but it's very close to the third out of the fifth. And with a new character and new idea and a bit of a stretch, that's not so bad.
And what's amazing, this is the longer one as well.
I had to look because I like I say, I got to a point where I'm like, I can't believe they're still in the woods. I don't remember this section of the film, which is almost pre-story setup, lasting so long.
Coming up related at the end of the show.
I looked it up, and I'm suddenly like, okay, it is a bit longer than the others, so maybe this can carry a bit more exposition. But yeah, it is.
It's got like one of the longest, not pre-titles, but kind of like the sort of preambles, I think, in the series.
But it's got to be the longest. But again, I've not seen.
Yeah,
Jason
I think it probably is the
Bourne
longest.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we discuss this film sequentially, folks?
Okay, so we basically
Spend the first hour in the woods.
So we don't see Jason Bourne in New York. We see Aaron Cross, who's in Alaska.
Yeah, I think what we'll find out over time is he's done something wrong in terms of this is a punishment. He's got to meet. He's a member of Operation Outcome, so this is Outcome, Treadscone, Blackbriar, all flavours of the same thing. And he's got a number rather than a code. Well, he has got a code name. That's the annoying thing as well. I don't know why they put in this code number business, because he's called by his code number for the Chems program, but he's got a code name as well. And like
it's very confusing.
Well, like with the whole James Bond as a code name thing, it doesn't work because his code is 007. James Bond's his actual name.
That's the thing with Bourne. Bourne was actually like a different name. It wasn't actually his actual name.
Yeah, but they didn't say you are Agent G as well, did they?
No.
That's what I'm saying. The
But
cover
they
is the name.
They could still like hold like the idea like, yeah, well, this is still Jason Bourne because Jason Bourne is like a cover name. So completely different character, but he's Jason
You could
Bourne.
go down the path of we've only got 9 active agents at any one time, and they've got either masculine or feminine versions of these 9 names. I don't think it's a great idea, but you could go with it. But the 2 different codes. But again, like you say, the introducing of him having a code that is the only way Rachel Weisz knows him distances the 2 of them from having any kind of connection. So it's actually unhelpful. But it's a training exercise. He's got to sort of trek across the mountains to get to this cabin. And he takes a shortcut and gets there. And basically Oscar Isaac, who's number 3, is already there.
Before he was famous.
Yeah.
Yeah, sipping on some tea.
Yeah. And so we get into he's lost his chems and blood work and all the rest of it that's got to be sent back to Outcome by drone.
Well, drone was quite interesting though. I mean, it's one of those things where, it's starting to be picked up by sort of various companies. It's still, kind of a little bit controversial.
Yeah, but they waste too long, like working out the drone to send it back. It's like they might as well have gone outside of. I was thinking of Mary Poppins. Let's go fly a kite.
Yeah, it's a little bit like that. Go fly a drone.
But yeah, he took a shortcut because he lost his chems, pursued by wolves. The chems only last a certain number of days, which is the film's attempt to build a constant ticking clock into the storyline, which is normally a lazy plot device.
Well, I mean, we don't see the effects of it though.
We never see the effects of it. We only see the effects of the actual viral when it's becoming embedded permanently, which is just sickness. What we need, I see, it's a dodgy ground with the way the world is now, and like able-bodied playing not able-bodied, and all the debates around that. If you suddenly had him like regressing to, I don't even know the PC way to describe it. We'll just say special needs for now. I don't know how that would play. Learning disabilities is probably the better way. The film hints he's got learning disabilities.
Additional needs. Let's say additional needs.
We work quite for fairly non-PC people. We work really hard to be PC because we don't really want to offend people.
We don't really offend people.
Not really, because there's no need. And if I ever use the wrong term for something, it's like it's not intentional.
No, yeah, we don't mean any of it. So We've all got experience amongst ourselves of similar things.
And there are terms I've used early in the life of this podcast I wouldn't use now, like the way I described the writers of Die Another Day. But anyway, the point is, I don't know if Jeremy Renner playing that would play well even 10 years ago. But you're right, we need to see something. Why not do it the other way round? Why not do it his physical advantages don't log in, and he's actually got mild disabilities or something? It's really difficult, but yeah. So we've got this, thing, and they've got to send.
Same as anything, could crash, couldn't he? And so it's like he has to keep on top of it.
Yeah, well, it's the same as like any sort of medication. Really, you've got to keep going. Really.
Otherwise, his body would shut down.
Show us the pain when he crashes rather than when he virals. Just do it that way. Just do. The pain is unbearable. The body sweats. The body temperature goes up to a dangerous degree. Anything like that. In extreme examples, we've even known patients slip into a coma or lose their life with it. It's very rare, but it is a real difficulty.
Yeah, it's a real problem.
Anything like that. So it's all about. So then I think we do cut to the events of the Bourne Ultimatum, don't we?
Pretty much. So we basically get a few, I kind of feel like a third of this film is basically bits of the Bourne Ultimatum. Really.
It's all most of it's in the first bit, though, with a little reprise at the end. But what's the point here? The point here is that Pamela Landy has exposed all their dirty secrets. Now, when some of Treadstone's dirty secrets threatened to come out, you had Brian Cox say, well, that doesn't exist anymore. We've shut it down. Here's this new one, Black Brian.
Here's a new project instead.
Well, just do that. You know what I mean? But anyway, what they do is they end up calling, Ed Norton's character, and he's overseeing all these clandestine operations, and he's now desperately got to shut all of this down. Locking the stable door after the horses bolted. It's been faxed out. It's already out there. What good's this going to do?
So I think so. The reason is they already have this outcome, but because Albert Finney's character has been sort of shared on YouTube of him talking about with a connect. So I can't remember talking about outcome or connection with someone from outcome, giving a speech.
Yeah, they need to show. Oh, I see. Outcome gets mentioned as well as a leak, and that is a retrofit. They've got Albert Finney in to do some of that. And basically, yes, you're absolutely right. It's now we've got to shut Outcome because it's the only remaining strand.
Yeah.
Apart from this other one we'll send in later. Right, okay. What we've got now is basically agents or overseers, I guess handlers of these people, Qs of this world, I suppose, go out and meet all of the agents out in the field, and they say, those green pills you take for your physical needs and blue ones you take for your mental needs, I think that's the right way round.
Now, listen clearly, 007.
Yeah.
You take this pill.
Yeah, and they basically say, don't need this anymore, we've got it in a single pill, and here it is. And what they actually do is poison them all.
I kind of thought it was a bit like the Matrix. You've got the green pill. No, you haven't. You've got the red pill or the blue pill. That's what it reminded me of. Obviously, Bond as well.
One guy collapses, and I looked really quickly, and I thought, is this Fisherman's Wharf or something? I'm just thinking there are a few Bond references in this, but it wasn't.
Yeah, there are quite a few. He could have been a steroid kid. There we go. And these, the Zorin origin story.
So, they're basically killing them all off, and they realise that they've got these two agents out at the cabin in Alaska or wherever it is, so they send a drone out to bomb it.
In the tundra.
They manage to kill number 3, but Jason Bourne, Freudian slip, Aaron Cross.
It's basically they could have just called this Cross or Aaron Cross, and it's audiences would be like, huh? What is this?
But he gets away by, what does he do? He covers up the tracker appears to be in their hip. They're all wearing trackers. Smart blood.
I was going to say that Bond, like the previous film, Bond vibes all over this one. And then once we get into, the motorbike chase scene, you're kind of getting GoldenEye, Toy of Dice vibes, Golden Gun vibes, all the Bond vibes.
So he covers his hip with a metal plate, just to sort of block the signal, and then eventually he puts it on like a wolf. Surely he could leave it on the floor, and they go, well, he hasn't moved for a while. But he captures a wolf and puts it on there, and he gets away.
Yeah, not before shooting down a drone.
Shooting down a drone. But they do believe at this point that Cross is dead. and all the other agents have been killed, and he heads towards Maryland, where the lab is located.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, so they got like the where they do the chems. So anyone who's like involved in that, and one of the employees decides to go crazy and starts shooting everyone.
And the film never satisfactorily explains that. It appears to be, the film hints correctly, I think, that it was a mole placed in there to kill off anyone who knows about the program. We've got to kill off the agents, of course. We've got to kill off the doctors. But then they implied that they wound him up and messed with his head, and it's like, well, that's not predictable as a process.
He does seem to have like a bit of a brainwash kind of way of when he's doing the shooting.
Could be told better though.
Yeah, it's never explained. It's just like it's
a bit like Naked Gun. I must kill the Queen. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, the scene in itself is pretty grim in a good way.
Yeah, and so Rachel Weisz climbs up the satellite and escapes Seven Eye.
Yes, yeah, it's basically GoldenEye, isn't it? Yeah, as you said, Chris, I had to ventilate someone. It is a little bit like that. All kind of the Bond vibes. Like last week, it was basically a rip-off of Quantum and various
Well, it wasn't.
other
It
films.
came before Quantum, but yeah.
No, it did.
Rip off
It
a
was
film
kind of
that's
a
never
bit
been
of
seen or
Quantum.
made. Because
Yes.
it's a bit like the way Dial M for Murder ripped off A Perfect Murder from 25 years later.
Yeah, it saw into the future, it gave you this crystal ball and said, oh. But no, obviously, they're kind of made, obviously, in separate times. But, it's the same, as we said at the top of this retrospective review series, there's going to be a bit of overlap between, like, Bourne, Casino Royale, for example. I mean, they're coming from a similar place. You can chart that through line all the way back to... Well, all the way back to Bond and all the kind of, spy series of sort of 50s and 60s, right through to detective era, maybe like 30s and 40s, from noir sort of going.
We should have had a lengthy scene of him eating scrambled eggs.
This is it, and drinking some really nice champagne, or how to have black coffee.
Okay.
Was it green figs, coffee very black, yogurt? That's the one.
I don't know what I think he's looking for chems, basically, and he just manages to find this character, whose name I need to look up every time. It's something like Marta. I need to look it up every time. It's such a forgetable character for such a great actress.
It's one of those films where like you don't know what everyone's called. It's like obviously you've got Cross. And, it's just like you have to kind of really work to find out what these people are called. If you don't, you got to pay attention.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I know it's not one of those films where you're going to have like alliterative names or something that's quite easily remembered.
Yeah, she should be called like Busty Strummings or something.
It's good thighs.
So yeah, basically, 4 agents. People turn up at her home, talking about basically trying to see she's all right and keep her safe. And it turns out to be 4 assassins. Why does it take 4 assassins to come to kill a doctor? She's not an agent. Why do you need 4 assassins?
That's like how many XYZ does it take to change a
They
light
don't
bulb?
succeed because Aaron Cross was there, but
He's hiding in the closet.
yeah, but they didn't know that. They thought he was dead.
No, I think the reason is probably just it's not just a straight up like hit. It's like we have to make it look like a suicide, and I think it's just like I mean, yeah, you probably don't need 4, and you got another.
It is a bit like sending in the National Guard because there's a shoplifter. It's like, what are you doing? All right, okay. So anyway, but this is to give him like some wicked action to do.
Yeah.
So he saves her, and then he like loses his stationery and they make love. That's what should happen, but it doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, what's the deal with the house? It's kind of like an old kind of decrepit house, though, isn't it? Or
well, they were probably mining in the San Andreas Fault. If it is a view to a kill. So anyway, I don't know what the deal with the house is. I mean, she's a researcher, but like she said, I don't know if she's a professor or doctor. I forget now.
It seems to be a bit of a sort of not a halfway house, but it seems to be kind of almost like sort of a dilapidated holiday home or something.
If you
like
want to
that.
make money,
like, does she really live there?
as a sort of academic like that, you need to like be published. And she pointedly says to him at some point, "This program took a lot for me. I had to be secret about what I was doing, and I couldn't publish works."
No.
So, but then it was a government contract. It might have been well paid. I don't know. The film is not interested in any of this. She's got with these things, with home invasions, you tend to need quite a big home to give lots of different people places to hide and different rooms to go in out of. You don't tend to like have a home invasion in a studio flat.
No, it's something we haven't seen before.
But the film does nothing about this. She lives in quite a nice place. Maryland has got. I've not been there, but it's quite a nice state apparently. And I think you've been there, Becca.
Passed through it almost on a tour.
Yeah. So anyway, the point is, they drive off, and we are almost at the end of the functional plot of this film. Right? He's only just met her. They drive off. He talks about needing chems. She's asked what he took and when he took it, and when he mentions the green one, she says, "You don't need those. You viraled off. It's possible to viral off them." Yes. Well, can I viral off the blue one? Theoretically, yes. Where would we need to go to do that? The answer is the Philippines. And that
Well,
is...
at least he gets travel in this film. You know, it's basically like a Bond film. He gets travel the world for the price of a cinema ticket.
Well, not really. Not really, because it's
You
Alaska,
go to America,
Maryland,
to
and
Philippines?
the Philippines. That's it.
Yeah, places that I wouldn't go to otherwise.
Yeah, all right.
Can't
So,
afford it.
all right. The point is, though, Chris, is there much more functional plot in this film after what I've just said?
Well,
I'm not saying nothing happens. I'm saying just after he meets him, we get the last bit of information we need. They are clearly going to find that they've gone to the Philippines. The one bit of the film I do like is, if you remember in The World Is Not Enough, he gets on a plane and then he cuts up his like Universal Exports card to like copy it as something, make it somebody else's, or to make the other person's card his. And the version of this in this film is much better thought through and high tech, I will say that. But effectively, as soon as she says it's in the Philippines, they're going to have to go there to attempt to viral him out. They're going to find he's gone there and chase him, and that's going to be it. I think the film has gone from a brief outline of why they need to chase them, that is stretched over 50 minutes, a brief action scene, him getting to her, saving her, and then him describing what the last sort of hour of the film's going to be. That's it. It's thin, to say the least.
well, she basically goes with him because, like, what else is she going to do? Because they're going to get him. They're going to get her. And he needs
And he needs an age-appropriate love interest.
Yeah. And
I mean, what if he got there, and what if he got to her house and it had actually been like Dr. Kaufman? Do you know what I mean? It's like this awkward bromance across the Far East.
That would have been amazing. Oh my god, I think that would have really given this film a shot in the arm.
Well, that would have been a buddy movie to be seen, wouldn't it? Like,
Yes. Oh my gosh, I would take my money. I would pay to see that film.
I mean, I think he was dead by then.
It was, yeah. Unfortunately, it's a fantasy film, you know.
We'll go to the Philippines, but after we've gone to the drugs, or after we've got the drugs, we'll head straight to Stuttgart because I can shoot anyone from there.
It's a proper effect.
The thing is, though, like with the Bourne films has a lot of like people on like in centre rooms watching screens, sort of shouting at people on computers saying, "Find them! I need, where's I need names, I need dates."
It gets silly in the next film because Paul Greengrass by this point was in his 60s and getting a bit out of touch with tech, and it was almost getting to the point where they'd have a picture made of 1 pixel and enhance it to perfect.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Although I have a question about all these guys sat behind computers.
Yeah.
These rooms are always so dark. Why don't they turn the lights on?
Because it's moody and they're bad guys.
I know.
It's dark.
They should sit round a kitchen table having an amiable chat about it over a pint of
I'll put a
miles.
nice, big lamp on. But yeah, I do appreciate his mood lighting altogether. But I thought, why just stick a light,
I mean, the reality is that they'll be in their kitchen table, like, or on a laptop, like, sort of talking about it over Zoom. They'll be like, "Oh, okay." Right.
I'd be like the complete antithesis of this. Oh my god.
Yeah. What do you mean I've got to come in? Have you seen the price of fuel?
Yeah.
Let's get a flight to the Philippines. It's cancelled. That's the Bourne Legacy made in 2022.
Literally.
I can't come in. I can't pick the kids up. Like,
There's nowhere else to try.
Enhance the
I think
picture.
I'll back it.
I can't tell who that is. They're wearing a mask. So they head off to Manila. How they do it is neither here nor there. There's a bit of tension about them getting across the borders and everything else, but they do. and basically they viral him out. And I don't feel the need to say a vast amount about this. The only tension in it is, of course, that he's slightly incapacitated while he's viraling out because he's unwell.
And of course they find him, but like, well, they find them, and so they're like,
And they send another faceless soldier.
Yeah.
To get him. I've never understood this. It's like sending one Terminator back.
There's always like the thing with the Bourne films. There's always like another. There's always has to be like an agent he has to go up against. So.
But again, that's getting tired by film 4.
Well, it's just like a trope now, isn't it? It's like it's a thing that has to be done, and this is like kind of like a chase scene essentially, on a bike.
And I don't think, because the chase scene is in various bits, and there's a bit across roofs and running, which is very like Bourne Ultimatum. So it's repeating itself. So I think it's largely that. It largely, because it's the film I've seen a little bit more often, and my favourite film series, I can't help but think of Quantum every time I see a scene like that. Although I do describe it more as Bourne action than anything else. But I remember being bored. And nothing was functionally wrong with the scene. The action
apart from fruit.
Yeah,
we'll come back to that.
Fruit Corner has returned.
We'll come back to that because I think that deserves a bit of its own slot. But I think the point is, I noticed the shaky cam was a little bit less than the green grass versions. There were a couple of shots that shook a bit, and it was all well established. And I had a very good.
It tried to kind of really early on in the film. Sorry to cut you up, but I thought it tried to kind of another really disappointing thing about this film for me is that it tried to regain some of that really early kind of almost documentarian style cinematography as you saw in the earlier films, but it didn't quite get there for me, unfortunately.
I didn't have a problem with it because again, shaky cam was going out of vogue quite severely by 2012. I think Quantum was already testing people's.
It was already on its way out, wasn't it?
It was. Bond is always slightly behind,
That was shaky cam to the extreme. Nobody knew what was going on.
But functionally, it was well shot because I was glad that it moved away from shaky cam. It was an attractive film. Renner is convincing on the action. They've given Rachel Weisz things to do in this scene. And put her in a bit of danger as well. He's very sensible in what he's saying about where she should go and what she should do. I've got a very good idea of the geography as well. The film establishes where he is relative to the bad guy and Rachel Weisz. And yet, I remember the shot. I mean, I'm not going to describe it, but I even remember the shot I thought it on. He leapt from one bit to another, and I just thought, I'm bored by this. And I don't know if it's the film's fault or the fact that it's film 4 in the series, or that the film hasn't done enough to make us care about these people yet, or what.
A combination of all the above.
I was really bored, but I didn't think it was bad. It was. If you'd have stopped the film now at that point and said, "Would you be happy to watch more of these?" I'd have said, "Yeah, this thing's wrong with it. I could do with a better script, whatever." But
it's because like you got decent enough talent behind it. And the problems with that is that it's leaning way too much into like the previous movies. It's trying to attach itself and trying to make it all like part of one story where it really doesn't need to. It just needs to be telling. It just needs to be telling a new story, but in the same universe. Doesn't even have to be in the same universe, of course, but
you can do that
if he really wants to,
And it might be the thing of me saying that I was always happy with the concept of a sequel. That speaks to what you just said, though. There's top level talent in this. People like Renner are good. They've been decent writers involved. We know Tony Gilroy can write scripts. We know that that it will attract a decent standard of actor because everyone in this film is like pretty top notch.
And it's frustrating because we can actually see, like you said, like the action's good. Like it looks like it's competently made, but it's just.
And I've had this with other films, and I can't. There have been examples, and I've probably said them on this show before, and I've certainly said it on summer reviews when we've got to certain films where I've been lukewarm on a film, but I've said to you, I could guarantee the sequel will be better though. And you see that on films.
Dip in the series.
I just sometimes the first entry you can go, well, the constituent parts you're putting together are pretty good here. There's talented people in working on this. I quite like this and that and the other about it, but I just think like it's more opened up now. Now you've done the origin, the sequel could actually be something a bit special. And I will have said that about several summer films we've done in the past. I thought it most recently about Battle Angel Alita, which I thought was a deeply, deeply average film, but you could make good films in that universe quite easily.
There's so many production problems in that film. Oh my gosh. There's amazingly realised.
And it was another film that finished in a really strange place. You had, funnily enough, Edward Norton at the end of that film, and it was like, oh, here we go, and then it was like credits. It's true of a lot of films, and I think that's true of the Bourne Legacy, that I was actively not thinking it was that good, actively thinking I should care more at this point. I know I've got third act action problems, but we're still in Act 2, really. The film doesn't really have an Act 3.
It just ends unceremoniously.
Well, it doesn't. I mean, Act 1 is him getting back. The Act 2 is him picking her up. I suppose they would say Act 3 is Manila, but it just doesn't feel like a third act. It feels like an extended second act. But I didn't care, so I was always happy that, like, yeah, if you want to make sequels to this, it's fine. Obviously, I prefer Matt Damon, but that's fine. But I still came out going, this is a bit shit. The action obviously finishes with, well, what does it finish? How does it finish?
In a fruit corner.
Chris's fruity corner.
Yeah. So there's extended chase with the police and the other agent on a bike, and Aaron Cross manages to sort of get the Emmy agent to crash into a fruit store, and I saw it and I thought, that packed a punch.
Yeah, you could make some punch out of it, you see. But the film, we're trying to promote healthy living here on this show, apart from bourbons, of course. See, if he'd been desperate to get to Manila for a packet of bourbons, I think that would have been, I'd have understood that. But fruit's good for you. He should have immediately eaten some oranges and that and been better. But there you go. So he dies. He dies like, yeah, in a pillow, and that's it. And then basically, he sort of, she crashes his boat in. He crashes into a pillow, killed instantly, and then like she guides it into a slide to sort of stop themselves because he passes out because he has been like injured, and they sort of get onto a boat, and he hands a gold watch he's found. They're trying to make a motif of time because the film's not very good at the ticking clock. It's supposed to be before he virals that, like, I've only got 38 minutes till I crash or whatever.
Oh, so is that watch meant to be like signify something?
No, I've only just thought of it, Chris. Because when he saves her at the house, he's immediately like, I need that watch. I need that watch. It's meant to be that he's constantly looking at time because these pills only really last hours or days at most. That's even not clear because he's lost his chems, walked 2 days across like a mountain ridge, and they still hadn't quite worn off. But anyway, the watch is meant to be like, I viraled out, I don't need a watch anymore. And it's the watch they've taken from the factory where the pills are made. So it's meant to be like the world's now his oyster. But they sit down, and of course, because I didn't pick up the symbolism of the watch, I thought, right, where are they going now? Are they finding a way to head back and sort of sort Norton out? And like, she's like, I'd like to get lost. And he's like, all right then, and he puts the map he was looking at away, and that's it. That's the end of the film.
Cue Moby music.
Yeah, and you could feel. You don't get many visceral reactions in British cinemas. I mean, obviously, if something's funny, the screening laughs at it. If you know this, I'm just saying that I've said this before. We read about American screenings where our audience was cheering and whooping, and I'm like, British audiences don't do that. You don't struggle to hear dialogue because people have decided to shout out like it's fucking Golf, You the Man or something. British audiences aren't like that, and I think it would do my fucking head in.
Unless it's like the King's Speech where people start applauding. But
you did get, that was ridiculous. And any idea that happens is not true. But sometimes you can get. I've only noticed 2 audible reactions. One was when Yoda got his saber out in episode 2 because that was a shock. Because he'd been a puppet in the previous film, and the other one was when Bond caught up the plane in GoldenEye and climbed inside, and the audience, a Scouse audience, and they're quite talkative people anyway, and you just heard, fuck off!
You can tell you haven't been to any of the screenings at Prince Charles in London, because they have been very vocal. Oh my gosh.
But those are the type of people who go to watch screens of The Room and then throw
No,
like
exactly.
spoons.
It's not one
I
of
was
those
going to
films
say
where,
these
like,
these
you
are
know, you
people
can
that have travelled hundreds of miles to watch a Bond film they've got at home. Says the man who drove all the way up to Becca to watch one about 5 years ago. To be fair,
exactly, and also to meet legends and
I'm not,
Tony
not I'm
Mountain
not
and Savannah
knocking it.
Hendricks.
I'm saying you've got the die-hard fans there, and that you're
You
probably
have
more
definitely.
likely. And there
But
are
even though I've been there a few times, luckily, to see, classic movies or sort of like, black and white films from the 40s and 50s, for example. And I mean, they're not raucous or anything like that. Obviously, die-hard fans who've been like, cheering it and, laughing raucously. But even,
yeah,
people
but
sort
it's
of laughing.
audible reaction to people talking to the screen, and when
Exactly.
Red Butler said, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." We were all like, "Figure-ette."
Yeah, it's one of those things. It doesn't kind of warrant a big sort of,
What I was
shove
going
and
to
take a
say
breath.
though is you do very occasionally feel the mood of the room. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
And when the credits started, you could feel confusion. You could feel like, "Oh, is that it?" And you feel it without anyone saying anything. You then see it, because as you leave the room, you start seeing people like looking at each other and everything. But I could feel it from behind me because because these seats were freebies. I never sit near the front. But I do remember I was in the biggest screen of that cinema, and I was sat nearer the front because it was like first come, first served. And I just remember feeling this air of confusion when the credits went up. Strangely, it didn't make me hate it. It just made me go, they've not made a complete film there, and I think they're a bit confused about what they want to do with quite a promising actor. Because bear in mind, the Avengers had only come out a month or two before. He still wasn't. He was still only just becoming a big hitter in the MCU. I mean, his best known film pre all that was probably The Hurt Locker, wasn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was obviously that kind of time before everything blew up.
Yeah.
So.
I'll just do my final thoughts. I really don't have a lot to add, and I want to hear more from you guys. But I think that's it, really.
Yeah, because this is this same year as Avengers, though, wasn't it?
It is, but Avengers came
It
out
was.
like end of April, beginning of May, and I think this might have been July or August. So we'd already seen it with the
It was quite a big
Avengers.
year sort of culturally, isn't it? Because obviously we had this, we had Skyfall later on in the year. We had the Jubilee as well. Had
The Olympics?
I want to say the Olympics
The
as well.
London
Yes,
Olympics.
that was a massive event.
You have Olympics every 4 years, but we're talking about the Olympics in our country, for those listening not from here.
London Olympics, which was a huge deal.
Yeah.
But it was just, one of these really massive years, just packed to the brim with all these kind of really pop culture moments.
And it could have been worse, because quite a few films
it just kind of went fell
delayed
by the wayside, really.
I mean, like Man of Steel was meant to be 2012, and it was delayed, and there are others I can't think of right now that ended up coming out the following year. I remember about 2 years before 2012 looking at what was slated and going, that's the year I explode. There are just too many films there.
There's just too many films coming out. No, exactly. I think that's kind of
Dark
what
Knight
happened.
Rises was this year as well.
That was it, of course. Well, I think that there are arguments for that other film kind of being being moved further along in the on the slate, just because it would have had to go head to head with like the Avengers and Bond, and other things like that, and I just kind of thought, well, you're not going to compete really, so.
But I just think what they've made here, I can see why people were keen to see it, because Renner's star was on the rise, definitely. The Bourne films have been critically lauded, and yes, it wasn't Greengrass, but everyone sort of was under the impression from, because we know how writers crediting is a bit of an awkward, shady business. Everyone thought Gilroy had written all of the previous three, so it was it was a bit like it may not be the same, but it may give us our fix of sort of this harder edge, really good action. And what they've produced is a film that does some of the constituent parts very right, in that the Bourne films have generally casted well. This is no exception. It's a little bit on the nose in some places, because Stacey Keach at the age he was here is a shady looking character, but they've got some of the best available talent. The action is well shot, the locations are well sourced, they haven't skimped on money visibly on this film, and they've at least got some ideas in it. But the end result is a film that's pacing is all over the place, is reaching to extend the universe using a plot device that belongs in like a Luc Besson sci-fi film, not in this, and then having got the film underway, they do nothing to make a real connection between the leads, although they've both got a humanity about them in their eyes, so you can imagine them caring about each other, but not to any great degree. And then just as you think the film's like really found its feet, it finishes. And so you walk out, if you're feeling uncharitable and just judging what's in front of you, you'd walk out saying, I think Bourne's jumped the shark here, I think that's the end of this series. If you're feeling more charitable and understanding that sequels of some kind are likely, it just wasn't what we thought it was going to be, and more on that next week when we talk about how that film came to be. If you're feeling charitable, or at least accepting, well, they're going to do sequels, so how do I feel about it? Well, they're better films, but I probably felt the same as I did about Creed 2 coming along. Now, this film is rubbish compared to Creed, but it was like, leave it here, please leave it here. But okay, if you're going to do a sequel, please be good. And I felt like that about this. I was like, I don't really think should be a sequel to this, but there's enough here that with proper writing and proper ideas, and he's now viraled out, so you don't have to use the chem plot in the future. You might be able to do something with him. But in my heart of hearts, I knew they'd stretched it to its limit at this point, and that's it from me.
But no, I'm just literally just going to repeat what I said at the top of the film. Really great performances, excellent cinematography. It looks for this series, apart from like maybe the first two films, this is probably the best looking film, definitely. But for me, it is very much Bourne light. I kind of feel like the whole sort of chems, drugs, and everything is just a massive MacGuffin. And yeah, it's kind of more something you would find in a kind of sci-fi thriller, definitely. But it's one of those ones where you have to follow it, kind of what's going on. The cast are massively underused. Dialogue can be quite dry. It takes forever to get going, really. But the cast are really solid. It looks really good. But for me, I just kind of feel like it was just pretty much Bond like, really. And it's like Bond without Bond. Basically, if they cast I don't know 009 or something like that, but still say it's a Bond film, it's just like no, really. Ed Norton, fantastic, but wasted in this film. Why have somebody like Stacey Keach? Who's just a legendary figure, and even just literally getting the previous cast members back again in what's glorified cameo roles, really. For me, this is like the absolute worst in the series. And yeah, I literally waited all these years, and I've literally missed it at the cinema and clearly haven't bothered to catch up with it since. And I kind of feel like I see what your point is, Dave, about there kind of being a real missing. I've seen this as I recorded it off the TV. I think it was on ITV3 or one of those channels high up, and obviously they took a break for the news in the middle. So I kind of thought, was there a chunk missing? Did I perhaps watch it wrong? I've since sourced it another way.
And no, they'd be back after the weather.
Yeah, they was, but they weren't. They were, but they weren't.
That's what they felt at cinema.
And it turns out there's not real. No,
so this part of the world, I just thought we'd be going over to see who's done some shoplifting and how Plymouth Argyle got on, and then we'd be back at the end.
And meanwhile, in local news, over to BBC South Today,
yeah,
or the ITV Fred Dineage news. But yeah, no, it's just my heart really wasn't in it. I tried watching it again, and I kind of thought, maybe it's been quite hot here in the certainly in the UK this past few weeks. Sort of difficult couple of days at work, and I kind of thought, well, perhaps I'm just not in the right headspace. Watched it again and had the same reaction. So listeners, this is my call out to you. I know you've had a few comments from a few people. Ken, you must be one of them. If you really enjoyed this film, you're a big fan of the Bourne series, or perhaps this is where you join this.
Well, you're a big something if you love this film.
I'm trying to be serious, and you're being rude, Dave. I disapprove. But yeah, no, if you enjoyed this, and obviously we had a decent time with it as well, but perhaps the failings of it were more than some of its parts. But yeah, listeners, do get in touch with us. Tweet us, Facebook us, email us if you really want to. Just let us know. Let us know what you thought.
We're joking.
It'd be really good to know your thoughts. Just get in touch with us and let us know, see how you got on. But yeah, literally just for me, amazing cast, looks brilliant, but very boring. So this is the Bourne boring, I'm afraid.
I just assumed I wasn't
boring
in the mood.
legacy.
Because in a cinema, I was never really bored, even though I could see the film's shortcomings. But yeah, I was bored this time, I must say.
Yeah, this is because last week I dubbed it like the Bourne Evasion. This is like the boring legacy.
This was as exciting as Tax Evasion.
Yeah, Bourne Tax Evasion. Can you imagine? Anyway, Chris, you carry on.
The Bourne Tax.
Yeah, the Bourne Tax. Boring tax.
I like it. Before Chris goes on, though,
anyway.
He did say one thing there. I do like the idea of all local news stations having to have daily Fred Dineage news.
Well, he hosted Meridian for decades and decades and decades. And then he retired like last year or the year before or something.
You made it sound like it wasn't him presenting. It was a section of Daily Fred Dineage News.
How is he doing?
And then
How?
then topless weather, you know.
Well, perhaps not from Fred Dineage, but no, it's just he present. Well, he's been on our screens and in our ears for eons and eons. And he hosted local news like for forever and ever. Our Men, it seemed. It was obviously a big part of kids' TV with How and various other factual programs and documentaries and stuff like that. And then I think he retired in the last few years. I can't remember if it was over lockdown or last year, maybe even this year. I can't remember, but he finally retired. And so that's kind of why, just certainly in our region, Meridian region. He was a staple of.
I only
staple
know
of
from
TV,
How.
so.
How too. That's
I kind of know from How as well. How too. Which they probably couldn't do now. They'd have to call it something else. But that's why. Anyway, so let's hope we don't kill them off.
They won't have a clue what we mean. The reason you couldn't call a show How To is they did raise their hand and go how at the end of every episode.
It was all about how the world worked. Literally, like, how does this work? What does this do? What does that do?
Showed you where the clitoris was, that sort of thing.
Showed you how a piston engine works, you know. He talked to you about technology and everything. So it's a kids' factual entertainment program. Yeah, Gareth Waterman, Gareth Top, oh my god, and a whole bunch of other people as well. So, but yeah, they have to introduce it a different way that is a bit more racially, culturally sensitive.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris.
Before we offend our yarls.
Yes, because all the indigenous Americans who live in England.
I know, but it's still quite.
We don't want to offend our Native American population, Chris.
They live in this country. But you know what I mean, though. It's not. It's probably one of those programs that is not going to be. They're not going to be watching it across the pond, are they?
I can imagine somewhere there's a proper like Native American Indian with like the full headgear and everything, just sat there in Birmingham with a single tear running down his cheek.
Sat in
Bob.
He's probably sat in Cornwall going, I thought I was one of theirs.
Yeah,
but
of course, if you listen there with the Queen and Samuel Jackson and I'd probably call it.
But to paraphrase Father Ted, the Native Americans, a great bunch of lads.
Yes.
This is it. You know what I mean? I'd have to do it in a less offensive way, even though it's not going to offend anybody in this country.
Why is it every week I'm saying some random shit when it occurs to me to say, Chris, what do you think of the Bourne whatever?
What else is there to say? I'm kind of a bit torn. Part of me kind of wants to be nice because I see the talent, I can see the effort. I just wish there was a better film in there, and I feel the film is just it's just a complete it's abortion from start to finish. It's from inception. Like, what are you trying to do? Like, you're just gonna sort of stitch in scenes from a past film and make it all connect. I mean, the real reason why is because they wanted to sort of stretch their chances out to see if Dave will come back. So they want to sort of.
Don't worry, we've not written off Jason Bourne. He's still part of this universe.
He's still going.
Yeah. I mean, I even heard at times he'll like come in and with Aaron Cross in a kind of joint film kind of thing, and it's like, okay, but again, it just comes across as so desperate, and it's just. Why? You didn't need to be this desperate. If you're gonna go with the Aaron Cross character, go with the Aaron Cross character. But don't try and tie everything in with fucking Bourne.
No, we haven't had a Cross spin-off film, have we? So.
You undermine both Aaron Cross and Jason Bourne by doing that, and it's just such a
because
idea.
you're saying this new sub-franchise can't stand on its own 2 feet, but at the same time you're saying here's a super duper agent. Forget that, Jason Bourne.
But not only that, you're creating like a subpar film and tying it in with a franchise that's been fairly successful and popular, and you're basically sort of just demeaning the past franchise. It's just like, why just leave it and just create a new character and start from there.
I think there's a reason. you're not giving this film credit.
Well, because there wasn't enough fruit in the.
There is that, but fruit's all you know about this film, Chris, really. Because we came online tonight, and you're
A
like...
lot of oranges.
We came on tonight, and he's like, I'm mentioning that fucking fruit, it's box office, right? But then you say, what else do you know? And he's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, tough shit, we got to record. So, Chris, do you think you might be open to learning more about this?
Yeah, well, seeing as I don't really know too much, I could do with some knowledge.
Okay. Becca, hit us. Not literally. We don't deserve that.
No, I'd have to reach down the phone. Yes, for a very boring film, I did struggle to get some fun facts. Other actors considered for the role of Aaron Cross include names I can't pronounce: Jake Gyllenhaal, Michael Fassbender, Joe Edgerton, and Oscar Isaac, who obviously ended up being cast as outcome number 3. Meanwhile, other actors considered for the role of Marta include Jennifer Lawrence. She would have been amazing.
None of those actors are anything like each other.
No,
doesn't that tell you something?
No, yeah, they're completely different. Right. So so versatile, so diverse. So for Marta, other actors considered Jennifer Lawrence, Diane Kruger, Michelle Monaghan, who's obviously popped up in Bourne before.
Jessica Tandy and Kate Blanchett.
Jessica Tandy. Many more besides, but I couldn't fit them all on my small little screen here. So at 2 hours 15 minutes, it's the longest of the Bond films, and it's also the most expensive of the series, costing $125 million. Ultimatum cost $110 million, Supremacy $75 million, and Identity just $60 million. And that's only my 4 fun facts, because it's so boring, I fell off my chair.
And I think we're going to call it there with a below average sort of length of show here, but I mean, we've that's all we've really got to say about it, folks.
I did tell you at the top it was going to be a short show.
It's not out of line with the sort. It's at the shorter end of what we do, but it's not like it's not just like a pamphlet.
No, but we tend to find that, if it's a long film, like when we do come to Lord of the Rings, oh my gosh, I think we're going to have to chop those in thirds, because they are so meaty. Or if it's not a very good film, then we don't have a lot to say. But if it's a really good film, there's a lot to say.
Here's a fun fact: Jeremy Renner doesn't say a single word until 15 minutes into the film.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I was joking. I said I think he went on a mountaineering holiday just before he turned up to film it. He thought it's a nice active holiday. I'll keep myself fit, and they just filmed it surreptitiously and said we'll throw that in for the first half hour.
Put it in.
And then they sort of approached him near the end of his holiday and said we're just going to film a scene here with Oscar Isaac. That's all right. As for social media, you can find me at the Pasty Kid 1976 on Twitter.
Yeah, you can find all the old episodes on cinemadraps.co.uk, as well as Podbean. It's all on Podbean, so go and check it out.
Podbeans, that sounds like something I'd quite like to eat.
Yes.
We'd be eating pod steak though, because we're not vegetarians.
I will. I'll have the beans. You guys have the steak.
Okay.
And then we'll have bourbons for dessert.
Yay!
And we'll be drinking our crazy cocktail.
Yay.
We'll have to come up with like a summer cocktail.
We'll have to come up with we'll have to have to be fair, I'd settle for coming up with one that doesn't have a fucking egg white and sardine juice
that's
in it.
pretty gross. But yes, you can find us on Facebook, The Expected Talk, Twitter at The Expected Talk, YouTube is the same, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Podbean, Podbay, over at Chris's website. But wherever you are, please kindly leave us a review and a rating. This helps us to rank higher and attract more listeners, and helps us to grow a lot more as well. And if there's a series that you'd like us to cover, please drop us a line, let us know what you want to hear us about. We may even consider it, add it onto our schedule that we've got coming up.
We've added a couple that people have suggested. We have.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily imminent in that the next sort of 3 or 4 we've got in our head probably are the next 3 or 4, but like
no, I mean
just
the
under
list
that.
I have is probably like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, at least 10 items long. in no particular order.
Yeah. Well, we're a couple of. I say we're going to have to discuss this offline, but we don't know if after the next film we're going to do a Bond commentary, a Bond book, or something, or straight on, or what. But we'll talk about that offline. But certainly, we're only 2 or 3 weeks from putting Clint Eastwood's life in danger.
Oh, I'm a little bit scared about that. But yes, also listeners, don't forget that we are at some point.
Do we feel lucky?
Do we feel lucky? Well, do you, punk? But that's all the westerns, so I'm looking forward to that. But yes, at some point we'll let you know when we are starting our review of the Ian Fleming Bond books. So, now's the time. If you don't have them, pick them all up. Get them from your lending library, get them as ebook, however you wish to read them, audiobooks even.
They're all on audiobook,
those.
yeah.
Yeah, there's really good as well, read by some really fantastic actors and actresses. But yeah, if you haven't read the Fleming Bond books, now is the time. Read those in prep, and we'll let you know when we start to review them. So that was a really bad hashed plug right there. But I thought, oh, knock it out now.
I mean, I think this is almost it's been an alright show, but I think it's almost put us on a bit of a downer because we do have another film to go. This is probably the low point in the Bourne franchise. Having said that, we've got one to go, which I saw once on its release, so I can't comment.
Same here as well.
Chris and I talked about it. If you go, like I said last week, if you go back to Summer Review 2016 Cinematronics podcast, it's there.
Yeah, we all know, isn't it?
But it's probably 5-10 minutes of conversation because we were going through a lot of films in those years. But I don't remember us being wildly positive about it. But as always, I'll watch it with an open mind. Certainly, the film we've covered tonight is worse than I thought remembered it being. So hopefully that one will be better. Which means, Becca,
Do you expect to talk return with our review of Jason Bourne?